Hi, I am Allie Camilletti, and you are listening to Snack Leadership. I will be talking about everything leadership, broken down into bite-sized pieces. You will hear what different leadership skills look like in organizations and how they can rise teams up or take them down. I help leaders build resilience and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors in my business. Spark your mindset. I provide leadership and sales coaching, as well as team building and guest speaking. My hope is for you to feel inspiration and to create a spark in your mindset. Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about values. Values are a person's principles or standards of behavior, as well as one's judgment of what is important in life. Erik Kancler is the owner of Kancler Consulting, where he is not a traditional lobbyist. His background is in journalism, scientific research, and nonprofit management. He doesn't like playing politics, yet likes getting things done. The process of navigating the political process and getting results for his clients is very rewarding for him. I met Erik when we were in a business group who supported consultants of all types. During this time, he recorded his TedxBend talk on making politics great again. I remember a discussion we had about how passionate he was about his values in connection with clients that he works with. I was so impressed with his level of deep compassion and transparency that when this topic came up, I knew he was the best person to speak to it. Get ready to hear what values are all about. Hi, Erik. I am so excited to talk about values today. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Allie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. All right. So let's talk about what made you embrace this leadership skill of really embodying values in your business.
I think it was inescapable, to be honest with you. I have never had a career goal of making a lot of money, for example, or having, a lot of power or anything like that. I tend to think of myself as a public servant. It's inescapable to me. What I do, both personally and professionally, has an impact. I want that impact to be positive, both when I am doing the job and also when I'm reflecting back on what I've done. So it was sort of inescapable. It just had to be that way for me.
And so let's talk about what are your values?
My values, and there's a couple different realms that I think about my values in. One is the interpersonal. How do I interact with other people? Am I truthful? Am I honest? Am I trustworthy? Am I proud of how I act? Am I bringing that out in others? Because I really think that, in my world of government relations, so to speak, being that I'm not someone who seeks out power, I don't influence through money or things like that. I need to be really good with interpersonal skills, and I need to develop expertise and trust and confidence. And if I'm full of it, it's not going to go well for somebody like me. But I think more broadly speaking, it's a difficult age that we're living in. There's, the way that I see it, there's a lot of animosity between people of different beliefs and different value sets. And there's a lot of negative impacts on the world around us. I cannot divorce myself or what I do from impacts on the environment, for example, or, housing need, homelessness, things like that. I see it around me. So that tends to permeate what I do. And I want to feel both, again, as I'm doing it and as I'm reflecting back on it, that the impacts that I had are positive in that light.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our world is definitely in a challenging time right now where it is testing us to really who we want to show up as in every part of who we are, which I think is awesome. For some, it could be super uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable and awesome at the same time, I would say. But if everything was just peachy all the time, I would just be out there having fun, right? So
You wouldn't be working. Uh,
no.
Now, let's talk about that. So, what have you witnessed with different organizations when they have really been in their place of values and they know how to go back to it? What does it look like with your relationship with them and what you've seen?
That's been most of my experience, frankly. So I don't have a lot to contrast that with. I've been very deliberate and selective in terms of how I pick my clients. If they don't mesh with me from a values set, um, I don't have them. Early on, I had a couple clients that sort of skirted the line. Um, and one where I had a project where I really believed in the outcome, and I think the client more or less believed in the outcome, but they had a history of not being believable on other issues. And I realized that you can't escape that. I thought, and it was eye opening to me because I thought this was an environmental oriented issue around water rights, and I saw some very positive potential outcomes, but their history on other issues hadn't been so great. So I don't know if that doesn't exactly answer your question, but it was eye opening for me that you need to live it. You can't just show up and say you want to do good. You need to be able to in life. And I think it's a fair test of people. Well, what have you done? What's your track record? Because people say a lot of things. Sometimes they mean it, sometimes they don't.
I completely agree with that. And in hospitality, if I were to relate it to that, and you have these set values, and you're talking about how you want your team to treat your guests, your vendors, and then you're turning around and treating them a certain way, it's confusing. It gets messy. So, yeah, I completely understand how that could be confused.
Hmm.
And I will say I've encountered people before where they've shared with me that they're just not happy in their work setting. Often it's friends, different leaders, or working with different clients, and I will always bring it back to values. And I will ask them, "Well, what are their values?" And then they'll be like, "This is what the rub is." And I said, "And what's your value?" And they'll be like, "Yeah." And I said, "I don't know how you get past that when values don't match because I am such a value-based person." So have you experienced that where you're like feel very compromised in a situation where values didn't match, and how did you handle that?
I'm gonna answer that question in a slightly different way as I think about my direct answer. I have two really good, really old friends that I keep regular contact with, and they are not happy with their careers. They make good money. They're in the Bay Area tech industry, and they see what I do, and they don't have, I don't expect everyone to have an interest in what I do in lobbying, so to speak. But I said, guys, what if what about your values? Like, what would you like to do? And they said, well, I don't really care about that. And I kind of thought, well, I'm not sure you're putting this together because you have a career that is making you a lot of money, but it's really meaningless to you. And in fact, you don't like the bureaucracy. You don't like working for the man, quote unquote. Yet here you are. So I thought that was just quite poignant. And I've made sacrifices to have a values oriented career. I know you have as well. And that's a different sort of gratitude. I could make two or three times the money. And if it felt hollow, I just wouldn't be able to sustain it. So I don't have that, nothing is really coming to mind. I've had a couple things that felt neutral to me, in terms of what a client wanted to do, and or the outcome that they wanted. And I would, I can reflect on that and say, well, okay, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing great about it. I'm not super inspired to do it, but I like working for this client. I generally, on average, feel that what we do really matters. In some cases, it's spectacular. So if in other cases it's neutral, it's okay. Now, if I had a client where sometimes it really the outcome and the pursuit meshed with my values, and in another case it was antithetical to them, I don't think I could sustain that. And that's not something that I have yet had to deal with.
What?
I'm
I am
serious.
I am so impressed. that you have not had to have that happen yet?
Not on anything of consequence.
Okay. Have you
Um,
ever turned away a client because you felt values didn't match?
yes,
Okay.
I definitely have done that. I have also turned away clients so in some cases I might turn away a client, and I have turned away a client where where it just didn't match my individual values. In other cases, I've turned away clients that would have very likely presented conflicts of interest with existing clients. And it's not to say that I valued the interest of one client more or less than the interest of another client, but if I have an established client, like one of my clients is a municipality. So that involves work in a lot of different elements of community service. Um, and the other client had an environmental ish outcome. And I knew that it would be difficult representing a municipality and an advocacy group on an issue. Again, this is sort of in the water rights realm, where I believed in both perspectives, but I couldn't do one independently of the other, and it would invariably have led to a conflict of interest. So that's a value in and of itself. I want my clients to know that I represent them. I am not compromised in my representation of them. And that gets more to my, interpersonal values as opposed to what is the impact of the world. I can't do one and not the other.
Yeah. And it does speak to that transparency piece of how you communicate that, obviously, too. So, for sure. And I will say, I have gotten into situations where I thought values aligned, and then I get deep into the contract and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know for next time there were some red flags. Should have paid attention to that in a little more detail.
And sometimes it's a gut feeling as much as it is a clear indication that there's a conflict. A lot of people in politics, and I think it's very easy to do, you can talk yourself into thinking something is okay. And if you don't have a gut reaction, it's very easy for people to do that. So for me, my honestly, body sensations, do I feel it in my stomach, in my chest, and do I feel anxiety in my shoulders? I pay attention to those because we all have to live within our own body, right? In our own mind. And if something doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right for a reason. So I tend to use that as an anchor. And it's a great early indicator. It's probably one of the reasons why my answer to one of your earlier questions was that I couldn't come up with, the sort of conflict because
Yeah,
I sort of pre-screened through my own reaction against that.
that's
But
awesome.
I'll be honest, when I do that, I leave money on the table.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't like leaving money on the table. There's no question about that. It's just, what am I willing to do to get it? And I'm not willing to feel bad about myself to make
And
that money.
as a entrepreneur, that can be hard sometimes, leaving money on the table. Absolutely, because we can get in that mindset of you never know when it's going to happen next or when there's going to be a
Yeah.
drop off, and always wanting to create that secure base, which can be challenging. So with it, I'll say, I don't know about you, but for me, what has come into play, and I think the conflict is I have a little bit of a pleaser in me where I love to help people.
Yeah.
And that can make it foggy on the values because I see the opportunity and that I can help them. And then the values will get in the way and block it.
Hmm. That's an interesting internal conflict.
All
Um,
right, we'll leave it there. Let's
but
move
I,
on.
I get it though. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. They really do. And I was thinking to your use of the word entrepreneur. I was actually thinking about that a couple nights ago, unrelated to this. I think it's true that I am an entrepreneur, but it didn't feel quite right. And this will sound, I don't know, being in politics, you can never trust what somebody else says until you've earned it, right? So anyone who doesn't know who I am or what I stand for might think, oh, whatever. I am a public servant. There's no way around it, but I approach it from an independent entrepreneurial perspective where obviously I have to have I have to be able to pay my bills through my career, and I want to have a thriving business. but I'm a public servant first.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, let's talk about a leadership mentor that you felt really helped you see the importance of values and embodied that.
I've had a few different mentors because I've had a weird career. I've been a scientist, a journalist, a nonprofit director, a bunch of different things. There's one guy that sticks out, an editor of a independent investigative journalism outlet that I worked for. And he had journalistic ethics at his core. He was really, really, really good, not flashy, not seeking the big byline. He just did his work well. And um, there are so many ways that that showed up. But one was, as a journalist, you're reporting what other people are saying. If you've got to decide, do you want to be a pundit or do you want to be a journalist? Because if you're being a pundit, you're writing opinion pieces. If you're a journalist, you don't really get to do that. You don't get to put words in other people's mouths. So there was one time where I did an article, and this was when I was a new journalist, like 15, 20 years ago, maybe more. And the first perspective of the competing perspectives that I heard was just so persuasive to me that I assumed it must be right. And I wrote the article from that perspective. And I interviewed the other person, but I'd already made up my mind. And he chastised me, rightly so. And I thought, I don't want that to happen again. I need to be true to the integrity of the craft, or I'm not going to be any good at it. So that's one example that has always stuck with me. And I think you can, change the words and change the context and take the spirit of that into, whatever it is that you're doing. And I tend to try to do that.
That is a great example.
Yeah.
Erik, what do you feel is a great quote that really brings in values and how we handle that in our business and who we are as people?
So I'm thinking of a book. And Allie, as you know, I have a history of working on cars. I've built some cars in the past, and um, I'm doing a car project with my daughter right now. We're rebuilding an old classic car. She's 14. We've got 2 years to get it done. And the book is Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. This is a book that I first read in college that my dad gave me. And actually, it was a book that he read it was printed in the year I was born, and he read it for the first time then when I was born and told me it was, well, it's very influential in how I raised you. So maybe it was natural that I gravitated towards this book. But right in the inner cover of this book, there's, as is often the case, there's a quote to start out the book, and it says, and there's a character, Phaedrus. Phaedrus is a character in the book, but it's a sort of a literary reference as well. And the quote is, "And what is good, Phaedrus, and what is not good? Need we ask anyone to tell us these things?" And I think what that gets at is, as we were talking about before, if you're open to it, it's in your core. You know. Or you're able to recognize the importance of exploring your values. Maybe you don't know, but then there's a process that you can go through to figure out what's right or what's best or what makes the most sense.
And it's so individual, right? I mean, my values are not going to be the same as others, and that is okay.
Mhm.
There's no judgment there. But I know what my values are, and I know when I'm in my values, I feel calm and healthy. And that's what I strive for every day. But no judgment on other people and where their values are in their life, in their journey at this moment.
That last part can be a challenge. I totally agree with you. It's where I start, and again, to my daughter and raising her, I talk to her about judgment. I never make a final judgment of somebody. I might have an initial impression of someone, but I'm willing to take it as an initial impression. And being in politics, I have just as you do, I have my own personal values. They're different than a lot of other people's values. I tend to be more progressive, but I value collaboration and bipartisanship. And I have a lot of friends that are much more conservative than I am, lobbyists and legislators as well. Sometimes I just vehemently disagree with them. Not always, but some of them are amongst, the most honest, open, transparent, collaborative people that I know. And in some cases, that really is the best way to find a solution for a community or a state or a group of people, because you can't just take one person's value set and apply that to everybody. It doesn't work that way. But if nobody at the same time stands up for their own value set, you don't really have one. So again, back to the interpersonal relationships. That's my bread and butter.
It's awesome. And you're leading us right into what's your favorite snack?
My favorite snack, and you've probably not heard this before, is cottage cheese and potato chips.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah. And I don't, it's funny. My daughter and I obviously have a close relationship with her. We talk about a lot of stuff. She loves it too, but neither of us really like cottage cheese.
Not alone, only with potato chips.
It's the combination. Neither of us like it with fruit or in other contexts. But it's something that, for whatever reason, my mom made for my sister and I when we were little. And it's just a nice combination of soft and crunch and sort of, sweet and salty. And it's my go-to. That's my snack.
Well, I will say potato chips are kind of good with anything personally, but
Fair.
That's just me.
That's a fair point.
All right, Erik, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for our time together.
Thanks, Sally. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Snack Leadership. I hope you felt inspiration, motivation, and felt your mindset spark. Snack Leadership is recorded and produced by myself, Ali Camilletti, and music by Shireen Amini.